What if this is the end of an era in Toronto? An era that began with hope, elite talent, ambitious contracts, but that might end without trophies, without answers, and without two of the biggest names of the last decade. With each passing day, the idea of Mitch Marner wearing another jersey gains momentum. And now, for the first time, John Tavares' name officially enters the radar of uncertainty. Toronto, once again, stands at the edge of the cliff. And if you followed the Leafs long enough, you know exactly what moments like this usually mean. Because it's not just about losing a player. It's about losing identity. It's about letting go of dreams that once felt etched into the ice at Scotiabank Arena. And now, with a weak free agency and no first-round picks for 3 straight years, what's left for Brad Treliving? If you still believe there's a path to save this era, leave a like and subscribe, because here we talk Leafs with no filters. And those who truly bleed blue and white know, suffering is part of the deal. The truth is, Mitch Marner might not re-sign. Not out of spite, not out of unwillingness, but because time passed and the window closed. After another early playoff exit, with the team trapped in a limbo between contention and reset, management knows keeping Marner might cost more than just money. It might cost a future. At the same time, John Tavares' contract weighs heavily. A veteran who can still contribute, but who is clearly entering the twilight of his career. And according to sources close to the team, the talks aren't progressing as expected. And that's where the dilemma begins. Brad Treliving needs to act, but he has no space, no picks, no flexibility. All signs point to one path. Toronto will have to part ways with veteran pieces, players who have already given what they had, but still hold some trade value, even if minimal. It's the classic discount move. Trades not to win, but to survive. And this is where the behind-the-scenes game begins. Who are the targets? Which teams are willing to absorb heavy contracts in exchange for a chance to rebuild? Here are 3 players the Maple Leafs should trade, and 3 players they should trade for. 3 players the Leafs should trade. David Kämpf. And when even the trusted soldiers start losing space, the message is clear. Something is about to collapse. David Kämpf arrived in Toronto as a quiet but effective bet. A fourth-line center who killed penalties like few others, handled heavy matchups without complaint, and gave the team the kind of solidity that doesn't show up in the highlights, but decides tight games. But time passed. And now, after 4 seasons, Kämpf seems to have lost his place in the blue and white hierarchy. In the final weeks of the season and the playoffs, Craig Berube, the new commander of Toronto's hopes, benched Kämpf. In every game except one. Not by accident, by choice. Because now, at 30 years old, with 2 more seasons left and a cap hit of $2.4 million per year, Kämpf represents a weight Toronto can no longer afford to carry. It's not about disrespect. It's about urgency. The cap space is tight. The assets are scarce. And if the Leafs want to rebuild any chance of competing, they'll need to make surgical moves. Start with the contracts that no longer deliver the expected value. Trading Kämpf now isn't about improving the team. It's about clearing the way. At best, the return might be a late-round draft pick, a symbolic ticket to the future. But even that kind of pick can become a trade chip for someone who brings real impact. And this is a new reality in Toronto. Trading not what you want, but what you can. This offseason won't be marked by splashy acquisitions. Don't expect a superstar out of nowhere. This will be an offseason of letting go, of parting with beloved pieces, of saying goodbye to players who helped build something, but now keep the team stuck in the wrong part of history. And the fans feel it, because every name rumored to leave is also a memory, a moment on the ice, A symbol of a team that once came close, and now risks drifting even further away. But maybe that's exactly the price. Maybe, to open a new cycle, you first need to close the door on the last one. And you, Leafs fan, would you accept this painful rebuild if it meant a real shot at the Stanley Cup? Would you say goodbye to Kämpf, to Tavares, to Marner, or do you still believe this core deserves one more chance? Let us know in the comments, because this is a conversation only those who live and breathe Leafs hockey will understand. Calle Jarnkrok. But Kämpf isn't the only name on this farewell list. Because if there's one player who symbolized the Leafs' versatility in recent years, that name is Calle Jarnkrok. When he arrived in Toronto, he was introduced as a true Swiss Army knife. A forward who could play on any line, fill unexpected gaps, adjust systems mid-game, and still contribute with speed and smarts. And for a while, he did all that, but time once again took its toll. Injuries came, consistency vanished, and what was once a luxury piece at the bottom of the lineup became a cost Toronto can no longer afford. Jarnkrok is 33 years old. He's entering the final year of a $2.1 million contract. And in the last playoffs, even when healthy, he managed just 1 point in 12 games. For a team that need value in every cent, that's simply unsustainable. Today, Brad Treliving's mission isn't just to build the foundation, it's to cut the excess. And in that context, Jarnkrok emerges as a clear candidate to move, especially in a market where teams need to reach the salary floor and can absorb contracts like his with relative ease. With a modified no-trade clause allowing him to block deals to 10 teams, the window of opportunity is still wide. And more than that, unlike Kämpf, Jarnkrok might still return something slightly more valuable. Maybe a 5th or 6th round pick. Maybe a prospect who's fallen out of favor. It's not much, but it's something. And right now, every asset counts. Little by little, the old guard is being reshuffled. Not with drama, not with major announcements, but with cold, calculated, painful decisions. The kind of move that doesn't make headlines, but changes everything behind the scenes. And the fans feel it. Because Jarnkrok is one of those guys who gave it all, who played wherever needed, who wasn't part of the problem, but now might not be part of the solution either. If Toronto truly wants open space for a new era, it must let go of the names that once filled the void. Because rebuilding isn't just about bringing players in. It's also about letting go of what holds you back. And so, the question gets even tougher. Would you trade Jarnkrok now, even for very little? Or would you give him one last shot to prove he still has value? Let us know in the comments, because this offseason is just getting started. And at the pace things are moving, no one is 100% safe. Simon Benoit. And finally, there are situations that don't scream urgency, but still demand a decision. Simon Benoit is one of them. At 26 years old, on a manageable $1.35 million per season contract through 2027, he had a strong postseason. Physically imposing, aggressive on the boards, and with a level of effort that, to many fans, represents exactly the kind of player you need in a series against Boston or Tampa Bay. But even in his best moments, Benoit came at a cost. Turnovers in the neutral zone, bad passes under pressure, shaky positioning when the pace picked up. And at the end of the day, what Toronto needs from its 6 defensemen isn't just physicality. It's puck movement. It's poise under forecheck. It's someone who can relieve pressure from teams like the Florida Panthers. Teams that turn every mistake into punishment. Benoit isn't the biggest problem, but he might not be the best answer either. And if the Leafs really want to turn the page, even these smaller decisions carry weight. Because everything connects. Everything adds up. Everything counts. Every bit of cap space freed up by moving Benoit, Kämpf, Jarnkrok, or even Brody could be the difference between a limited roster and a team that finally takes the next step. And maybe that step is already being mapped out. Because as these exits begin to open space, things behind the scenes begin to shift. A new kind of silence begins to form, not of doubt, but of movement, with more cap flexibility, with recovered assets, with a lighter roster. The Maple Leafs are positioning themselves to strike, and three names are quietly making the rounds in the front office. Players who aren't superstars, but who might be exactly what Toronto needs right now. Balance, tactical intelligence, and fresh blood. You'll meet those names in the next video. But for now, the question is different. Are you ready to see this roster truly change? Are you ready to say goodbye to the faces you've watched year after year? To make room for something that, for now, is only a promise? 3 players the Leafs should trade for. Connor Murphy from the Chicago Blackhawks. But every departure only makes sense if it clears the way for a new arrival. And among the names that have been circulating behind the scenes in Toronto over the past few months, one of them seems to be gaining momentum at just the right time. A player who was once considered, then dismissed, then reevaluated, but now, with the right piece on the board, might finally find his way to Toronto. Connor Murphy. 6'4" physical presence, experience, consistency, a defenseman who may never have been a star in Chicago, but who was always reliable, always there. And now, at 32, he might be ready for a change of scenery, exactly when the Leafs need someone like him the most. Because if there's one thing Toronto has learned from its recent playoff exits, it's that talent alone doesn't win in the postseason. You need presence. Someone who can handle pressure, play the body, and stop an opposing rush even when the system breaks down. And Murphy is that. With only one season left on his $4.4 million contract, he becomes more than affordable, especially if the Leafs can convince the Blackhawks to retain 50% of his salary. If that happens, Murphy would cost only $2.2 million against Toronto's cap, a completely manageable price for what he brings. And it makes sense for Chicago too. The Blackhawks are in transition, integrating young defensive talent, restructuring their roster around the future, and ready to clear space. All signs point to Murphy being in one of those situations where the team respect him too much to hold him back, but no longer sees him as part of the long-term plan. That's where Brad Treliving comes in. With Kämpf, Jarnkrok, Benoit, and possibly other veterans on their way out, the space is opening up, and now, the moment calls for decisiveness. Murphy may not transform the team on his own, but he could be the anchor that stabilizes a defense that has, for years, teetered between promising and vulnerable. And you, fan, would you approve of this move? Connor Murphy in blue and white, a physical veteran with a controllable cap hit and hungry for a new chance. Drop your thoughts below, because in the coming days, other names will surface. But this one might be the most realistic, the most accessible, and the most necessary. Dawson Mercer from the New Jersey Devils. But a competitive team isn't built on veterans alone. Sometimes, the smartest move is to bet early, before the market realizes the true value. And if there's one name starting to echo in Toronto's inner circles as an unexpected but perfectly fitting piece, it's Dawson Mercer. Officially, the New Jersey Devils haven't put Mercer on the trade block, but the buzz is there, and it's getting louder. The Devils are rethinking their identity. They want to get heavier, more physical, harder to play against, especially in the playoffs. And in that process, Mercer, who's only 23 years old, could end up being a high-value trade chip, not due to lack of talent, but because of tactical fit. And that's where the Leafs come in. Because if there's one gap that's haunted Toronto for years, it's the absence of a reliable right-handed center, with youth, versatility, and penalty-killing ability. Mercer might be all that and more. 2 seasons ago, he scored 27 goals. He looked like the offensive star of the future. But now, even with more modest numbers, Mercer has become a more complete player with a defensive focus, strong transitional reads, and poise under pressure. Exactly the kind of profile Craig Berube values in his lineup. And the detail that makes this even more appealing? The contract. For $1 million per season. 2 years left. And at the end of that stretch, Mercer would still be a restricted free agent. Meaning, the Leafs retain control. They invest in the present without compromising the future. Think about it. A young player with upside, a manageable contract, and a proven ability to perform at a high level. That's rare. And that's why, if the chance arises, Treliving needs to be ready. The big question is, what would New Jersey want in return? Maybe picks, maybe a veteran defenseman, maybe a young piece from Toronto's system. But if the price doesn't involve sacrificing the team's core, this could be the kind of gamble that changes a Leaf structure from the inside out. And you, fan, would you give up an asset to bring in Mercer? Do you believe he could be the hidden piece this puzzle is missing? Let us know in the comments. Mccann from the Seattle Kraken. Some wounds from the past just don't heal. And among the more attentive Leafs fans, one name still echoes as a missed opportunity. Mccann. He was here. Briefly, yes, but he was on the roster, wore the jersey, and then he was cast aside, left unprotected in the expansion draft. And the Seattle Kraken didn't hesitate. They snatched up Mccann as their first big success story. Since then, what we've seen is a breakout that many believe could, or should, have happened in Toronto. Mccann became a top scorer, became a leader, became the first real star of a fledgling franchise. But now, quietly, that cycle might be about to reopen with both ends of the story staring each other down once again. Before the last trade deadline, rumors began to swirl. The Kraken, even without officially shopping Mccann, began listening to offers. And with the arrival of Mason Marchment, losing the franchise's top scorer wouldn't be the end of the world. Toronto, meanwhile, is watching, with a roster in flux, more cap space ahead, and the urgency to add ready-made talent without mortgaging the future. Mccann looks like the perfect return, not just because of the unfinished business, but because he offers exactly what's missing now: offensive versatility, mobility, and the ability to play both wing and center effectively. At 29 years old, with a $5 million contract and 2 years remaining, he still has plenty left in the tank. And if Seattle is willing to retain some of that salary, a realistic scenario for a team unlikely to return to the playoffs anytime soon, the cost-benefit becomes extremely attractive. For the Leafs, it would be a reunion, a reckoning with the past. For Mccann, maybe the chance to finish a story that never truly began. And this isn't about sentimentality. It's about timing. Because now, unlike before, Toronto is ready to give him the right role, the right space, the right system. The question is the price worth it? Seattle will certainly ask for something significant. A high pick, a promising young player, maybe a combination. But in the midst of a rebuild that doesn't want to admit it's a rebuild, maybe Mccann is the only move that can unite the urgency of the present with the regrets of the past. So, fan, would you bring Mccann back? Would you be willing to pay for someone who was once ours, even if the cost is high? Or would you rather turn the page and chase something new? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because this is a kind of rumor that, if it comes true, changes everything. And with that, the puzzle begins to take shape. Murphy to stabilize the defense. Mercer to bring youth and versatility to the center. Mccann to reignite the flame. 3 moves, 3 bets, 1 new path. If you believe this could be the Leafs' silent rebirth, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because next season won't be about maintaining. It'll be about daring, and maybe finally conquering.